Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Ayurveda, Artemisia, and COVID-19. We're honored to be able to hear from leading experts in the fields of Ayurveda and pharmacology from around the world. Please, just a few things to keep in mind before we start. The symposium is being recorded, and you may text questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen, which will be addressed at the end of the presentation. I now have the privilege to introduce Dr. Suhas Hirschsager. Dr.
Thank you.
Suhas
Yes, go ahead.
is a classically trained Ayurvedic physician with over 30 years of clinical experience. He's a best-selling author, motivational speaker, and an acclaimed educator in the field of Ayurveda and integrative medicine. He has traveled around the globe popularizing Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, and natural medicine. Dr. Suhas has formulated some very successful herbal products, generating multi-million dollars in revenues. He's been featured in many popular podcasts, radio, and television shows. He's an advisor to the Chopra Center and is the director of Ayurvedic Healing Incorporated. Welcome, Dr. Suhas.
Thank you, Jennifer. Namaste. As she said, on behalf of Oncotelic Therapeutics, APDA, Ayurvedic Healing, Boston Center of Excellence, I welcome all of you to this second virtual symposium. And we have some wonderful global experts discussing about the pandemic of COVID-19 and the potential of Ayurvedic medicine, and especially an Ayurvedic herb that has been in use for thousands of years. Oncotelic Therapeutics has developed a unique extract of Dhammanaka, Artemisia absinthium, which we proudly call it as Ayurveda. And we are very excited with the excellent results that we have seen in phase 4 human trials. Ayurveda has been tested in silico, in vitro, in vivo, and the study design that we have created for the human trials is even not comparable with anything else that is out there. So let's get started for this symposium, and it's my great honor to introduce my dear friend and an eminent Ayurvedic doctor, Dr. Geeta Krishnan. He is an Ayush representative at World Health Organization in Geneva. Dr. Krishnan is responsible for WHO's inclusion of Ayush systems of global healthcare and their appropriate use in whose member states. He will be discussing about COVID, Ayurveda, and World Health Organization in its response. So welcome, Dr. Krishnan.
Thank you, Dr. Suhas, and it was a very good introduction to me, and very short but very sweet. I like that, and I should also thank all the panel members for having given me the opportunity to speak first. And really, it is very good moment to see that there are different ways of pharmacological products being developed across the globe for COVID, and especially some of them are being very closely connected to Ayurveda. So I'm very happy about that. I would today discuss about how WHO's response has been towards COVID-19, and especially regarding traditional medicine part of it. I would also discuss a little bit about how Ayurveda related studies had happened in different parts of the country, different parts of India, and some details about where we are standing in all these respects. So with that, if you with your permission, let me start discussing the talk, get into the matter of the talk. In fact, COVID-19 has been a major disruptor of the entire ecosystem of healthcare across the globe. We didn't have any kind of treatment available for this. It was a very fast spreading disease, and like a small group of people had been dying of that. But the spread at which this disease was crossing populations and continents made sure that it got all the attention that was required, and it was the pandemic. What we have come to understand is that traditional medicine and modern medicine, after a period of something around probably about 2 centuries, are neck to neck, or on the same platform, or the same level playing field for the first time in history after a long period of time. So this means that both the systems didn't know this was a new disease. It was fast spreading. Both didn't have the time to respond to it, didn't have any previous information about it. Everyone had to start from the scratch. So, if from in this context, I believe that COVID-19 had been a major disruptor in health system across the globe, because if you look at it, the population of the globe had turned towards traditional medicine in a big way. Like we know that because of the number of medicines being sold, number of prescriptions being written, number of doctors being consulted for, and number of questions from the people across the globe asking for alternative healthcare methods to manage their problem, and as prophylactic, or like management of the disease of COVID. So this had been this had been a major advantage for traditional medicine from my perspective. In fact, in the very early phase itself, WHO had understood that there is no answer to this at the moment from the modern medical area, which was its major standpoint from which WHO always looks at human population and human healthcare. Now, in May 2020, after realizing all these problems and understanding the time period, or the time lag to which an appropriate medication could be found out possibly, the DG of WHO made a statement saying that all medical systems are important and should be explored into to identify and bring out or develop medicines for COVID-19. He said that there is no difference between like traditional medicine and modern medicine. And he also said that all medicines will have to go through the same rigorous tests of efficacy and safety before it gets accepted into the system. On the same day, the regional director of WHO in African region also made a very similar statement. And further to that, I'm happy to tell you that the African nations came together. They developed a specific herbal medicine research protocol for COVID-19, which was published by WHO, or rather WHO helped in creating this like discussions, international level discussions within the African countries, including experts from other parts of the world. And this protocol was developed. So I had been in touch with few countries, and I have been in touch with few countries within Africa where clinical trials or possible clinical trials in COVID-19 disease or therapeutics for from herbal medicine is being discussed, and is being advanced. So this was a major change in thought process for WHO also. Like, you should imagine that WHO, and this in its whole history of past almost 70 years, had never 75 years had never done something like this. Like, this is for the first time that WHO was ready to look at traditional medicine as a major possible answer for a major disease which was haunting the humankind in the 21st century. So in India, the use of Ayush systems, when I say Ayush, I mean Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, Homeopathy, all of them were very much in advance, like you brought into the COVID management program. So if you can imagine, India was one of the first countries to have the Ministry of Ayush had been one of the first ministries in the world to have come out with a COVID management or COVID prophylactic advisory for the population. So that is all as early as March 2019, like when the government of India published this advisory for the people, saying over and above the social distancing and wearing the mask, what else you should do, how you can improve your immunity, how you can improve the barriers which are using Ayurvedic and Ayush techniques. So this was something which had been brought to the notice of the people of India, and the people of India took it up quite enthusiastically. You should understand that if you see the number of like fatal cases of COVID-19 in India is reduced, not only because, as many people claim, that India is already had this kind of infections earlier, or that this like there is so absurd in such situation that people had even made claims that there is so much of dust and pollution in India that even the virus cannot exist there. That kind of scientific publications had happened, so absurd. But but at the same time, these publications forgo to take into consideration the following of Ayush advisories by the population within the country. In fact, the Ministry of Ayush actually launched an app. This was and did a 90-day assessment of how many people within the country were using the Ayush advisories. Out of these 90 days, they got 1.32 crore, which is around 10 point, 12 million. I think it is, yeah, it is 12 million,
People use it.
12 million responses. 12 million people responded to their question, like who were all using Ayush interventions as a prophylactic method in the country. You can just imagine, like this country, India, is not a place where everyone is tech savvy, and not everyone sees such a small, request from Ayush Ministry to respond to their to download their application, and and respond to them as to whether they are using Ayush in their prophylactic methods against COVID-19. So it is a large number of people across the country used it. How did India use it? How did India benefit from it? The number of it actually reduces stress on the health system considerably. It brought down the stress on the health system, and it improved the efficacy of the health system in managing those patients who needed critical care. If you look at the number of patients who were admitted just because they were COVID positive in India, that happened only for a short period of time. India very soon came out of that situation, said that anybody who is having COVID positive need not get admitted in the hospital. They can stay at home, but take care of themselves using different interventions, including Ayush interventions. This was published and propagated by the Health Ministry and the Ayush Ministry, and Ayush used this, and the people of India used it very well. Now, COVID related activities within India had been related to public health delivery. There has been a lot of work happening in the industry sector, and also related to economy and research and public communication. Like we can come to all of them one by one. In fact, in the very beginning itself, the government of India initiated or organized an interdisciplinary Ayush research task force, which is a 17-member committee from different parts of the country and different parts of the world. I was fortunate to be a part of that. It was headed by Dr. Bhushan Padwardhan, who is the vice chairman of University Grants Commission of India, and it had representations from Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Indian Council for Medical Research, like the DBT, the Department of Biotechnology, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and WHO, and academicians and private practitioners. So this was a very highly engaging committee, which had lot of powers vested on it to create and decide what are the work which needs to be done related to Ayush in terms of COVID related research and COVID related implementation programs. So if you look at this particular aspect of the activity of this particular of this committee, we can find that they identified areas such as public health, quality and safety of drugs, nutrition and nutraceuticals, development of nutrition and nutraceuticals specific for COVID management, basic and preclinical research programs. They organized, they undertook clinical trials, epidemiological studies, and health system studies, and screening for R&D, products, and even for new proposals for supporting it with grants. So let us look at clinical trials in Ayush. During this entire period of starting from March 2020 till date, like till December 2020, there had been nearly 200 studies, or 200 odd studies which had happened in India related to COVID management. And if you look at the number of studies and the number of and like if you segregate them into modern medicine studies and Ayush related studies, you can find that more than 65% of the studies were Ayush related clinical trials. Like when we talk about clinical trials, I will have to let you understand that the kind of vastness of the studies, because some of them, when you talk about a clinical trial, would be just as simple as like a 60 patient trial, to some of them actually being community based, interventional management of patients and its observational results collection. Like one of the studies, the largest of which had 195,000 people enrolled in it, and their data was collected. So this is huge studies, even in terms of a country like India, or even in terms of talking about large clinical trials. This was not only one such study; there were several of them, in the range of 80,000 to 95,000 patients, like being enrolled as participants in prophylactic as well as in early treatment methods. So one of the studies which were taken between Government of India, Ministry of Ayush, as well as with the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and with the Indian Council for Medical Research and DBT together, is being run in about 20 it's a multi-centric trial. They have identified 4 drugs for undertaking, to be checked for its efficacy in prevention and management of COVID-19. One of them was for specifically for COVID-19 prophylaxis, and 3 of them were for management of management of early and mildly symptomatic COVID disease. So this is still going on. We have interim results which are all excellently, very positive, very interesting. And we also know that, taking cue of these advisories and these kind of research programs happening in India, that states of India, in India, health is a state matter. The decisions of what to implement in a country, in the state, is decided entirely by the states of India. India is a large country with more than nearly about 30 states in it, and each state are very powerful, and they have their own financial mechanisms and mechanisms of implementation to get health to the people. So, for example, in Tamil Nadu, all hospitals provided Ayush prophylactic medicine. Like all hospitals, irrespective of whether it was Ayurvedic hospital, Siddha hospital, or modern medical hospital. Every single hospital in Tamil Nadu within the government system were asked to provide Ayush prophylactic medicines. In Gujarat, more than 50,000 people in quarantine were, at one time, were being given Ayurvedic medicines as a prophylactic. So there are several, if you talk about quarantine medications for prophylactic management of COVID-19 pandemic, we should talk about Madhya Pradesh. Madhya Pradesh quarantined and gave Ayurvedic Ayush medicines to 2 crores 20 million people. It is looks huge in probably in outside India and China, but in India it is still a small number. But we gave medicines to 20 million people while they were trying to manage the pandemic in Madhya Pradesh. At the same time, there were independent clinical guidelines which were brought out by all the systems of medicine, starting from Ayurveda, yoga, Unani, Siddha, and homeopathy, on how to manage and prevent COVID-19. And it was all in public domain, and it was advised to the practitioners that they should practice exactly within their limits of practice. But of course, if patients come to them, these are the guidelines with which they should be managing COVID patients. This happened because there was continuous discussion between the research programs that were happening and the outcomes of it being assessed and analyzed and synthesized into action programs, which was happening in India. So this was an excellent time for Ayurveda and traditional medicine across the globe, but I would say specifically for Ayush systems within the country of India, because there was a lot of activity which had happened, lot of synergic activity happened, lot of translational research happened, lot of people came together. And I can also tell you, because I am part of it, that I am coordinating the international studies related to COVID and Ayush like interventions. So we have done one pilot study in the NHS program within UK. We are taking up a larger study with one of the most famous universities in health schools in London, related to COVID-19. And in a prophylactic study, we are doing a 2,500 patient study over there. We are doing another study which is a placebo controlled study on COVID therapeutics, which is also taken with the university and the NHS Trust and the Ayush Ministry together. So there is a lot of activities which is happening. We are in discussion with very interested and interesting groups within United States also, and I hopefully should be able to like I hope that it should come to fruit. And for that matter, I had a proposal which I got 1 or 2 days before, and which had been in principle approved by the ministry today, so to go forward with further
Thank
discussion.
you, Dr. Geeta Krishnan. Thank you
Yeah, yeah.
so
Thank
much.
you. Yeah, is my time over?
Yes, sorry, your time is over.
Thank you so much.
If you want to wind up with a final thought, you can do that.
No, that's okay, because I had almost winding up, so that's it. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Geeta ji. And I think a couple of very important points that you brought out, that WHO is looking at traditional medicine as an answer, but it has to have the potential, but it has to have the standards of safety and efficacy for any other pharmaceutical intervention that we talk about, and all the encouraging results that we see with Ayush interventions. So these are very, very encouraging thoughts, and thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing. Let me invite my esteemed colleague, Dr. Renu Dikshit. She's a BMS, MD, and PhD from one of the very prestigious universities in India, Banaras Hindu University. She is an expert in Ayurvedic herbology, associate professor at Department of Dravya Guna and SB Ayurvedic College, and she has worked in the past as an Ayurvedic expert to Telangana Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, as well as a scientific officer for Ayush in Andhra Pradesh itself. So she's going to share Ayurvedic perspective on Artemisia. She has lots of wonderful information for us, but I would like to request her to keep it nice and short and sweet so that we can respect the time moving forward. Welcome, Renuji.
You have to unmute.
Namaste. Thank you all, and good evening and good morning to everybody who is here. Thank you, panelists, for giving this opportunity to speak on this such a wonderful platform. Myself, Dr. Renu Dikshit, I'm professor. It's small correction. I'm a professor and in the Department of Dravaguna, placed at Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh, India. I am being told to speak on Ayurvedic perspective of Artemisia. Actually, why suddenly Artemisia has become such an important plant? Next slide. Such an important plant because of its large, diverse genus, and it belongs to the family. It belongs to the. Can the slides be moved? Belongs to the family of Asteraceae, and the name, actually, the Artemisia, the name Artemisia itself is just derived from the Greek goddess Diana. Everybody knows this Artemis because most of the women, it was used in women healthcare system, and there are about 500 species all over the world, but India alone has got 45 species available in India. Actually, suddenly the Artemisia, next slide, the Artemisia is such an important drug from past 5 years because it was the drug which was given a Nobel Prize on to the UU2 scientist who worked and brought important chemical composition called as artemisinin, which really had very good effect on the cerebral malaria. And in 2014, a year before, the drug Artemisia was called as Herb of the Year by the International Herb Association. Now coming to Artemisia in Ayurveda. Actually, when I was told by Suhas sir and Shekhar sir to speak on Artemisia, I thought just I started searching whole of the review of the literature because I have to speak something which is there in Ayurveda. It was found that when I searched, there was nothing. I could not find Artemisia, which is being called Damnaka, which is being used in India. I could not find the literature in Brahataris, the important treatises of India, that is Charak, Shushrut, and Vagbhat. So what I did is I just went back and wanted to see whether the important scriptures, which are one of the oldest scriptures like Vedas and Puranas, whether Artemisia was there or not. Then I just found that Damna was, next slide, Damna was present in Shiv Purana, in the Garuna Purana, they were like it was used in the Lord Shiva's very lot of rituals of in Hindu religion. The drug was used, and the next the next it was noticed that the one of the oldest temple, that is Jagannath temple, Puri temple, they have got one ritual called as stealing of Damnakat plant, and they steal and they put it on the idols inside the temple. And when I just looked at why this particular ritual is done, it is found that these idols are made up of wood, and to protect. And this Damnaka has got very good Jantu Nashana, that is anti-parasitic, parasitic. Yeah, it kills the parasites. So this particular drug was used there. Like this, we have got many references. This shows that the like whatever it said that it came to India from the invaders, from Arab, or from the Britishers, but it was already present in India in the name of Damnaka. So the next slide, the Damnaka, which is called as Damniti Damna, means which kills the diseases, which kills the rogas. That's why it's called as. And the drug which is used in India is Artemis vulgaris. And there are many yeah uh, yeah, and there are other drugs which have been also called being used, Artemisia seversiana. So this is the drug which is being used in India. And when you look into the organoleptic properties, that is called as Rasaguna Virupaka of the drug. If you look into it, it is said to have got Tikta. Tikta means bitter, and Kashaya astringent quality. This is the one of the look. Whenever as Ayurveda says so much about the epidemics, when in the Charak they have got wonderful description of Janobdhamsa, which says that whenever there is a Janobdhamsa epidemic, the tridoshas, the three humors of the human body gets vitiated. And when these are vitiated, there is a lot of disturbance in the body. And so when I just went into the pharmacological Ayurvedic study of Damnaka, we found that the rasas which are there, Tikta and Kashaya rasa, and the Lagu Ruksha Tiksha gunas, which are said to be the light, dry, and very penetrating property. And it has got potency of Ushna, which is hot, and Vipaka, next slide, Vipaka is Katu. Uh, if that is in those conditions, like Ayurveda says that whole of the body is channelized, and whenever there is such type of pandemic attacks, Janupdamsha occurring in the country, in anywhere in the part of the world, there is these doshas have been vitiated, and there is a secretion, that is the ama is formed. Ama is the indigested substance which tries to obstruct the channels. And whenever such type of things happen, this particular rasa which we have been mentioned, Tikta and Kashaya rasa, Tikta is said to be the Amapachana, and the Lagu Ruksha gunas, which are said to, and Tikshna guna, which will try to open up the they will open up the channels. In this way they remove the toxic substances. And when I went into the studies, I found that this is wonderful Deepan and Pachana, means it has got very digestive stimulant activity, and Pachana digestive activity. And along with that, there is a wonderful indication of swasa, means it is used in breathlessness or dyspnea. Bhutonmada, that is Bhutonmada according to Ayurveda, means the microbes which cannot be seen by the eyes. Krimis means includes the bacteria, viral, and this particular drug is used in the kusta. Next slide. In the Ayurveda, it is also mentioned that Damnaka is used for the Udara diseases. That means the diseases of the abdomen. So it is used in the diarrhea or flatulence also. So, and there is a word called as Hridya in it, which means that it is a cardiostimulant. So you look at all these descriptions, which says that this drug really has got, which can be worked on COVID. Cardiostimulant activities there, aphrodisiac, whichever drug is aphrodisiac in Ayurveda, Vrishya, that they will definitely have antioxidant property or immuno enhancing properties. So this is also used in the Rajnigundu, one of the lexicons which is present, which is one of the important lexicons of Dravigon, that is the Materia Medica of India, says that it has got expectorant action. That means it can be used in bronchitis, asthma, cough, and breathlessness. And along with that, as I've already told that these other, especially this COVID situation, we compare it to with the cough or with the Procopa, cough and Vata Procopa, cough and Vata Procopa. So this particular drug, that is Damana, is acts on cough and Vata. So it can be definitely like Artemisia vulgaris can also be tried in the COVID conditions. And we have got, it has been also used in the fevers, a substitute for the cinchona. Next slide. There, even when I went into the classics, I have already told that there is mention of Damna was not found. But later Nigantukas, like different lexicons have mentioned that, like Dhanvantari Nigantu, Raj Nigantu, that is like 12th century. It was later 12th century. But I feel the Damnak was already there in the India before it came from the other countries. Raj Nigantu, Madhupala, all these different Nigantus have mentioned that this drug along with the Damnaka, there is another drug by name as Vanya Damnaka. This other species of the Damnaka, which is, we get the reference from the Raj Nigantu and Dhanvantari Nigantu. But then, along with these two varieties, there was a third variety mentioned by Nigantu Ratnakar that is called as Agni Damnaka. Next slide. Agni Damnaka. This particular Damnaka has got rucha, that is like it improves the taste, which loss of taste can be improved. Whenever the ama is improved, automatically the taste gets better. So it is there, like again it is works on the heart, and vatkafa, gulma like tumors, and plia means it is hepto, like on the livers or spleen, it works. So this reference of Agni Damna was seen by Nigantu Ratnakar. And when Acharya, next slide, Acharya BG Shah has mentioned it as Nagadamana, that is Artemisia nilgirica, which is like common in South India. It is a synonym, and VG Desai has mentioned that Artemisia seversiana can be taken for Damnaka. There are, like, we have got many species of Damnaka present all over the India, because India length and breadth is very long. So in Gujarat they have used Persica, Artemisia persica, and in South they use Artemisia palens. And if you go into the formulations, Sri Gopal Taila, which is a fruit acid, has got Sri Gopal Taila, Mahasogandha, Mahaprajraj Prasani Taila. These are the one of the important formulations which have got the contents of the Damnaka. Then there is a mention of another drug of Artemisia, which is called, next slide, which is called as Chauhara. Chauhara is also called as Kit Mariavani, means because it is said to be the variety of Evani, that is Trachispermum amai by Dhanvantari Nigantu. It has also got the activity called as Kirminashana. Kirminashana again means it is it kills the worms or the any of the microbes present in the, so and when we looked into its chemical composition, it said that serotonin is one of the important component which is present in immature flowers and heads of the leaves, which is used for the worm infestation. And it has also got the same qualities what I have said a vulgaris. Next slide. Vulgaris, like Katu Tikta Rasa, Lagu Ruksha Guna, Tikshna Guna, Ushna Viryan Katu Vipaka. This is Artemisia meritema, which has been taken. There is this particular drug has been studied for anticonvulsant activity. And next slide, anticonvulsant activities. And actually all the damna are used for the skin diseases. And there is one more, next slide, there is one more plant which is called as Dvipantar Damnaka. Dvipantar Damnaka, that is very famous in all over the world, in the name of Artemisia absinthium. And this is also added in Ayurvedic Pharmacopoeia of India in the 6th volume. And this has also got Tiktarasa, Laguruksha, Tikshnaguna, Ushnavirya, Katuvipaka. And if you look into the karmas, that is the properties, the actions of it, it is been said as Shrotahara, means it is has got anti-inflammatory activity, Vednastapan, analgesic activity, and Agnimandya, again it is digestive stimulant. Jeerna Jora, that is the chronic fevers, but COVID can be compared to the Navajora, that is fever, but there is also a mention of Jora and Krimi. It is also used in Yakult, like Yakult means liver disorders. So absinthium is contraindicated. Next slide. Contraindicated in gastric and duodenal ulcers. Excessive dosages causes vomiting, severe diarrhea, retention of urine, central nervous system disturbances. But alcoholic extracts of it is used as anti-malarial, and water extract leaves as anthelminthic. Because of the all the Damnaka varieties, They take out the essential oils. They, in India, initially when I came to Tirupati, when I was a child, I used to see damnaka being used in the flowers, and girls used to apply to their hair, and there used to be some rituals. But now that damnaka has been replaced with the chrysanthemum leaves, which doesn't smell at all, and the water extract leaves are anthelmic. It has been like, it has been whole of the things have been uh, imported, exported to other countries, so we are scarce of it, and it has got antibacterial and antifungal property, and it is one of the constituents of Mahasaugandhika Taila according to the Bhav Prakasha. One more variety that is available in India, next slide, is Ganga Tulsi, that is Artemisia vestita. This Ganga Tulsi is same as that of the common Tulsi which is available, and it is being used in the same way like cough, cold, fever. So in certain areas of Himalayas like Niti, Manna and Malari, it is used as, because all the Damnak varieties have been used as agarbattis, that is incense sticks offered to the local deities. The leaf of this, the extract of leaf is hemostatic, and the essential oils are used as antibacterial and fungal. But the dilution, because all these things contain also, it is 1:1000 dilution, and it is also has got there are many other species which has been compared to the Ganga Tulsi. Next slide. So new researchers, just I went into it, that artemisinin has got is being very effective in COVID conditions. There are many articles and many works going on. Next slide. And next slide. This is what we say, that Ayurveda, according to Ayurveda, COVID is called as Janopdamsa, Janopodamsa, and it is the next slide. These are the, I just wanted to tell you what exactly the epidemic means in Ayurveda. It is by name Janopdamsa, and according to Ayurveda, next slide. It is Acharya Charak says, explains that when there is a dissimilarity in physical constitution of human beings, still there are factors that are common to all individuals, and that causes the vitiation of this factor, leading to simultaneous manifestation of the disease, having same set of symptoms, leading to mass destruction of the countries. This is being said, and we say that the spread of the any of the epidemics is by air, water, desha, and kala season. And when you go into the effect of it, the root cause of vitiation of all this, we say that it is adharma and sins of past lives. So certain pharmacological management have been mentioned, and we feel that any drug which is antipyretic, antitussive, having antioxidant property, that is rasayana property, analgesic property, can be used for the treatment of COVID. And Damnaka has got its role in cough, cold, fever, antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral activity. So with this, I thank all the people over there for patient hearing, and I acknowledge Dr. Jail Shastri sir. I just, before the start of this, I just consulted him, and my students Lalita, Saiti, Mohammad Asif, for helping me in the presentation. Thank you all. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Renuji. That was phenomenal, and I think you shared wonderful information that simply validates all the poetic benefits that have been described in Ayurvedic classical literatures about Damanaka. But all those benefits are validated by the latest scientific research that is being conducted, and especially the anti-inflammatory response that we are going to talk about more. Where the pandemic meets the endemic, what is happening in the body. And now all those benefits, we actually see that how effective this herb can be and has been used over a millennia in various parts of the world. So let me pass it on to Jennifer, who's going to invite our next speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Suhas. I'm happy to present Professor Maurice Iwu. He is the president of Bioresources Development Group, an independent biosciences research and development organization that cultivates, processes, and produces medicines and cosmetics from natural products. He is also a member of the board of directors of Nemeth International Pharmaceuticals, formerly Pfizer Nigeria. He was a professor of pharmacognosy at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and a senior research associate at the Division of Experimental Therapeutics at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research in Washington, D.C. While there, he conducted research on drug discovery for the treatment of tropical and emerging diseases, including drug-resistant malaria, leishmaniasis, and the Ebola virus. Professor Iwu has presented over 300 scientific papers, published more than 200 research articles, and is the author of 4 books, including the highly cited Handbook for African Medicinal Plants. Professor Maurice Iwu is the chairman of Imo State Task Force on COVID-19 and a member of the Umbra State COVID-19 Response Committee. Welcome, Professor Iwu.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. I'm really glad that I was able to come into this webinar. I want to share some of our own experience with the COVID-19 and artemisinin. First slide.
Okay, so let me share my screen.
Please, can you? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll share my screen.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. I belong to a group called Bioresources Development and Conservation Program. It's actually a network of 6 different companies that are united in developing natural product medicine. We have the one that I belong to mainly is the one, the top right, the institute, where we are doing mainly research into traditional medicine, African traditional medicine, that is. But traditional medicine is global, that we're also interested in the Ayurvedic treatment system. Next slide. We have 3 core components. We do a lot of scientific cooperation, and this is why I'm here. We do our own research and development, and then we sustain our business through commercial section. And that's why we call ourselves a social business. We are into business not for profit, but to make profit, to be able to do what we do, what we like to do, but namely scientific research and development. Next slide. If we have a short history of what happened during the pandemic, the first time it came into the world was in December 2019, when the Chinese announced that this was a new virus that they couldn't deal with. But we also know that in 2002, 2003, that the SARS-CoV happened in China. So from our point of view, although the virus came into Nigeria on February 28, we never believed that the virus was novel. Neither did we think it was different from the other coronaviruses. So we treated it, even before WHO classification, as a second wave of the first one. Next slide. Why that is important, that it also informed how our own approach in responding to the pandemic. We had to learn from our past experiences. I'm not a physician, but I'm heading the response team because of our past history with Ebola virus, when we were able to contain it in our country, that we are in the middle of other countries that had Ebola at the time, but we were barely touched by it. And we also believe that we can do use what we have locally to be able to treat the disease. The key component of our approach is the last section there, namely the transnational medicine. Things move very rapidly from the bench to the bedside. And what this means that we're able to now observe what the patients were doing and responded accordingly. Next slide. Next slide. Then if you look at the COVID-19, as I said earlier, the SARS-CoV-2 was structurally similar to SARS-CoV-1, if you call it that, because up to 60% similarity in terms of their structure made it possible for us to now look at how can we be able to treat this new disease without necessarily having to wait until a new drug has been found. Next slide. Now, one of the things we found that happened, that a lot of the patients that we actually encountered before they were started on the normal COVID-19 therapy, most of them had already started on their own taking artemisinin drug. Nigeria is a malaria endemic country. What it then means that people on their own, without any prompting, without any physician order, without even laboratory tests, automatically go over the counter and buy artemisinin therapy and take it on their own. So we now realize that we had a situation that happened that 415 patients, a cohort of 415 out of 600 people that were treated within our state, that 415 of them had taken anti-malaria therapy and only reported the symptoms they were having when the disease did not go down even after taking the anti-malaria therapy. So it means that they have already started that therapy even before coming to us. But what was also interesting, that most of them also took the local therapies, the detox tea, the immunovite, and so on, which I mentioned soon. But the key thing there is that we didn't lose one single patient out of the 600. And that was what made our own case very phenomenal, in the sense that it was our national data is low, but ours in our state was remarkable that because people were able to treat themselves with what they have. Next slide. When you look at the global cases, this was taken at December 8th. The same picture still remains. When you look at the number of confirmed global cases, the deaths, the recovered people, you realize that Africa recorded the lowest infection rate and death rate when compared to other parts of the world. At the time this snapshot was taken, we had less than 2%. USA was having 4%, Europe was having 6% and more. Next slide. A lot of theories have been brought forward as to explain what was happening, why Africa was having such a low rate. Some people say because we didn't test enough. Others say because we were not recording our deaths. Others said it was because of the weather. Some other people have but one of the things that became very obvious, two major issues here, was the malaria issue that I had mentioned earlier, and also the fact that when people were tested, that there was a lot of similarity between people developing antibodies already, even when the virus was supposed to be new, against other coronaviruses. So there was a cross immunity between the previous coronaviruses and the COVID-2, SARS-CoV-2. Next slide. When you look at the global picture, and then when you now look at the malaria issues here, you can find that if you compare United States, Brazil, France, Italy, South Africa, and the tropical African countries, you can see how the graphs in terms of deaths, the African countries flattened, and then those of these other countries was very clear. But then when you also compare within Africa itself, South Africa and the malaria endemic areas, we can also see the differences. Next slide. Next slide. The same set of pictures will keep on emerging. We looked at it from different time periods, and you realize that at every given point, that the African countries had a lower death rate than when compared with the United States and Brazil and France and Italy. And when you consider the fact that we have a very poor health system, the infrastructure is barely not there, but yet we are able to record very good success rate in terms of people surviving. As I mentioned, in my own home state, I was actually chairing in two different states in the country that we didn't record any death of those who came into our care because of early malaria treatment and then follow up with local therapy. We didn't use any oxygen therapy. We didn't put people on ventilators and so on. And it was directly using traditional medicine and being able to allow them to treat themselves for malaria earlier on in the course of their infection. Next slide. This is to be able to contrast where you see the previous map that we had, where we showed it showed the level of infection globally. And when you look at this map, you can also see that these are the areas where malaria is endemic, where people are already taking ACT. And studies have now shown that various ACTs are active in vitro. So we had two hypotheses to test here. One is to see whether artemisinin itself can have any direct therapy, or whether it is just just a chance that they had malaria before. So what we now decided to do was, first of all, test our own product that we are using for the treatment. But then when we are lucky, then when Oncotelec approached us, and mentioned the project about artemisinin. So for us, it was like trying to answer a scientific question. Why is African death rate low? And we believe that it's not just the environment, it's not just the happenstance, that it is because that our people start early treatment. And artemisinin being taken so early in the course of the infection gives us some advantage over those who didn't have malaria, who are not used to taking anti-malarials, who obviously didn't consider this as something that they can use as part of their treatment regimen. Next slide. So you then ask, which is a question people ask us, if artemisinin is that active, why did the Madagascar COVID-19 therapy fail? We believe that what has happened was, we accept that it was based on artemisinin, Artemisia annua. It is on, but artemisinin itself is a very unstable compound. We believe that possibly it got degraded during the manufacturing process. But now, based on the work from India and China, and then the one we are trying to design now, you can find that the amount of artemisinin you have in a dosage form, a liquid dosage form, an extract of the substance, may not have been enough for sustained treatment. And then the final issue that probably happened to the Madagascar therapy was the variability of source plants. Artemisia grows in various species, and then if you grow them, even the same species, there's very serious variation in the quantity of artemisinin that you get. The one that is local to the Artemisia afra doesn't even contain artemisinin at all, although it is still used for treatment of malaria, which shows you that something else in the plant probably is also working. Next slide. Next slide. So as I said, we then had to mix the artemisinin therapy with our own local IHP detox. Interestingly, we patented this product in 2014, 2015 during the Ebola crisis. And then, so we already had the product in our share before this particular pandemic happened. So it was a natural choice for us to go back. But then the Indians will say that the main active compound in that particular tea, a very bitter compound, is Andrographis, which you know Indians will claim that's an Indian plant. So Andrographis paniculata is the product that is being used for the treatment of the pandemic in Nigeria right now. And people, so far as I say, we have had 100% success rate in those who use the artemisinin therapy and then the detox. Next slide. Well, then we have immunovite IHP, which is also used as a preventive, which we produce during that same process. Next slide. Now we just started, as I said, we have two clinical studies that we are mounting. One is on the detox tea, which is ongoing, but we are starting a new study on artemisinin, 500 milligram. When you compare the 500 milligram to what probably was in the Madagascar, you can see that they are miles apart. If you are a pharmacognosis, you know that if you have a liter of Artemisia annua, you may not just have even up to 20 milligram of the active compound in that therapy, in that substance. So when you're in a situation where you have 500 milligram, I think it's a very good start. And I think it's something that made us very interested in this. We're already gotten ethical approval from our local university here, University of Abuja, here in Nigeria. We have a very powerful study team. Professor of pharmacology, clinical pharmacology is leading the team. We have the vice chancellor, equivalent of president of Nnamdi Azikiwe University as a principal investigator. We have site coordinators already in place. We are taking the drug development approach. We are going to go through the whole hog. The regulatory body is involved. The idea here is that we don't want something that somebody tomorrow will end up saying that, oh, this thing didn't have this, it wasn't statistically valid, it didn't have that approval, or didn't have that approval, or that the other T's are not dotted, and I's were not dotted, T's were not crossed. So we're going through the full hog, and patiently, we hope by the end of this year that we will have fully started the project, which is in 2 weeks' time. We are sure that the project would have gone far. But we are encouraged by the result we are getting from India and China. That makes us believe that artemisinin itself may now obviate the need for us to be testing vaccines that we are not sure of, vaccines that had never been used in human medicine before, so that there are no need for that panic measure. that artemisinin can be not only a therapy, but a preventive measure, cheap, affordable, and we also know the pharmacokinetics, total pharmacokinetics of artemisinin, because it has been used as an anti-malaria for over 20 years. Thank you very much. Next slide. That's my contact in case you want additional information on what I just said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Iwu. Thank you. That was great. We will next be hearing from Dr. Wanjun Chen. He is an internationally recognized immunologist. His research focuses on mechanisms of T-cell immunity and tolerance and manipulating T-cell immunity versus tolerance in animals. Sorry. Welcome, Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen, do you want to put it in slideshow mode?
Can you see my slide? Can you see my slides now?
We can see your slides. Do you want to put it in slideshow mode?
Yes, I will.
Perfect.
How about this?
We can see. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Jennifer, for the introduction. And good morning, colleagues and friends from the globe everywhere. Oh, good morning or afternoon, evening, or whenever. It is my great pleasure today to have an opportunity to share with my perspective with regard to the role of TGF-beta in this COVID-19. So my laboratory has been interested in TGF-beta in regulating the immune response for quite decades. Actually, we focus on TGF-beta regulating immune response and inflammation, so on and so forth. This cartoon actually is basically a very simple cartoon to illustrate how TGF-beta signaling. We know that TGF-beta is basically secreted as a latent protein, and it has to be activated in order for TGF-beta to bind their receptors to signal through different pathways. I'm not going to detail for that pathways. However, I would like to mention a few points here. First, we have to remember TGF-beta, mainly in the latent form, can exist in our blood. Normally, in the normal people, we have 40 to 80 nanogram per milliliter of latent form TGF-beta. This is not working activity, but it is there. And the TGF-beta can be expressed in all the cells or produced by all cells and the tissues. And TGF-beta receptors can be expressed in almost all the cells in the body. And as said, TGF-beta needed to be activated in order for a signal transduction. TGF-beta in the human diseases can be a good, bad, even ugly. Now, back to February, actually, even earlier than the February, because of these COVID-19 diseases exploded in the world, I had some kind of the idea before in 2003 when the first SARS occurred then in China. I thought the TGF-beta might be important factors in this disease, in the pathogens for these diseases. Therefore, I wrote this hypothesis or kind of proposal to lay out the rationale why I'm thinking that TGF-beta is important, give my hypothesis and the theory, and I even proposed whether we could manipulate TGF-beta treatment for the COVID-19 patient, especially the severe late stage for the patients with this disease when all the other options of the treatment was exhausted. Afterwards, Dr. Wang Trip from that company called me. We had a very nice discussion because in his company has some compound working, TGF-beta blocking compound working the human immunology. He thought this is a good idea too. We had a very active discussion. We thought maybe we should work together to do something for the sake of the patients. This slide shows you the some common feature and problem of these COVID-19 patients. I summarized here. We know that COVID-19 can be symptomatic or minor or moderate diseases or even severe pneumonia or the fulminant diseases. And there's quite different abnormal immune responses and inflammation in these patients. For example, in the blood, people normally see the so-called cytokine storm increases in different pro-inflammatory cytokines such as IL-6, IL-1 beta, TNF-alpha, so on and so forth. Interestingly though, these patients normally have a decreased proportion of lymphocytes, especially T cells. And then though, if they have some increase of the frequency of the Th17 cells, this is a type of pro-inflammation cytokines. It is always almost that the neutrophils increase not only in the blood, maybe also infiltrating the lung. Interestingly enough, besides the increase of the IgG, normally you can see this COVID-19 patients have increased the IgA. In the lungs, we see a massive infiltration of the neutrophils, macrophages, increase in IgA, and of course also cytokines, including there's some evidence starting to reveal that TGF-beta can be increased in the lung too. Now, we know that patient has unique, very severe problem. What is the dysregulation of blood coagulation system? Normally the thrombus formation, which may be an important cause for the some patient death. And the cause of the COVID-19 patient death mainly can including two aspects. One is the so-called ARDS, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome, mainly caused by the acute pulmonary edema, maybe also the acute inflammation and the infiltration and cause the acute lung fibrosis too. And second part is the sepsis and the septic shock. That's the major cause for the death. Now, I would like to spend two aspects for TGF-beta in COVID-19, which is probably the bad or even ugly part. The first part is the what and how does TGF-beta affect the lung, during the pathogenesis for COVID-19. Second is where and how is TGF-beta probably produced activated during this virus infection. The first part. Now, where this TGF-beta and how this TGF-beta affect the pathogenesis of the COVID-19 patients. As we know that COVID-19 virus can infect the areas, and then there's TGF-beta can be increased. The TGF-beta intake might be affected different aspects. I'll go through one by one. Most of them is already reported. Some is still question marker. TGF-beta can increase the pulmonary edema. That is what's known. And TGF-beta can induce lung fibrosis, maybe one of the most important factor. TGF-beta somehow can also causes or increase the septic shock. This is still question marker. TGF-beta can induce epithelial or endothelial cell death. TGF-beta can increase the furin in epithelial cells, which is quite unique. TGF-beta can be an important factor to recruit neutrophils and macrophages infiltration to the lung. On the other hand, TGF-beta can be an important factor, maybe one of the most important factors to induce or increase IgA. This can be known for many years. TGF-beta can increase the neutrophils in blood. TGF-beta in tandem is the most important factor to inhibiting or suppressing the T cell proliferation, including CD4, CD8. Some report already show TGF-beta somehow can actually directly or indirectly enhance more of the cytokine production, surprisingly though, paradoxically. And TGF-beta is one of the most important factor, essential factor for inducing the Th17. And another report says TGF-beta can induce this protein called the TGF-beta protein with this acetylation of this particular protein there. I'll give you a few examples. For example, TGF-beta can increase the pulmonary edema. This ARDS is characterized by the hypothermia from flooding of the distinct air spaces of the lung with protein-rich edema float. And pulmonary edema, because of this increased lung vascular permeability, and also in the same time, the inability of the alveolar epithelium to remove the edema fluid from the air spaces. That's the cause of the pulmonary edema. In ARDS, TGF-beta has been shown can reduce the alveolar fluid clearance, but in the meantime, it can increase this permeability, therefore, can be important for this pulmonary edema. Second, TGF-beta, as I mentioned, is one of the most important for the lung fibrosis. Maybe this also occur during the COVID-19 patients, because we know this pulmonary fibrosis is one important feature for COVID-19 patients. The COVID-19 may directly lead to the development of pulmonary fibrosis through a direct consequence of virus-induced cell death, or indirectly causes the consequences of the cytokine-mediated alveolar damage. A key molecular mechanism of the lung injury fibrosis is the activation of this TGF-beta, and active TGF-beta may recruit, activate, or even stimulate growth of the fibrosis. That's the important we have to keep in mind. And that's a very interesting, unique feature for this COVID-19. I found this paper published recently. I think it's quite interesting. I want to go through with you. We know that the original SARS in 2003, they used two receptors. One is ACE, another called TMPRSS2, standing for this protease. However, this is SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is this virus for the pandemic, uses three receptors. Besides these two, AC2 and TMPRSS2, also this virus uses furin, very unique, very unique. And the TGF-beta, though, can do something very uniquely. TGF-beta does not affect the expression of the CE2 and the TMPRSS2. However, TGF-beta can enhance or increase the expression of furin from these cells, human epithelial cells. This intent, though, we know furin is one of the most important factors to active latent form TGF-beta become active TGF-beta, which may be forming a very devastating positive load there. Another one is recently published too, which is a quite interesting protein too, called TGF-beta IP K6676AC. This can be a marker in the blood as a severity of this COVID-19 patients. Basically, what they found was that this so-called acetylated K76, sorry, this is a typo here, 676 TGF-beta induced the protein short for this one. It is significantly increased in severe COVID-19 patients. They show that TGF-beta can upregulate this protein. Importantly, this protein can become acylated by this CBP and the P30, which is the very important factors. In this report, they also showed very strikingly that this protein can activate NF-κB, which induced more of the inflammatory cytokines, including these so-called cytokine storm cytokines. And this is the data they showed there. You can see here, this protein, they compared the normal people with the patient with light disease without ICU or patient with severe disease. You can see here, this patient with ICU have significantly enhanced the expression of these proteins, which suggests there's something going on here. This is the second part I want to share with you is that the production and the activation of TGF-beta, how this TGF-beta is produced, activated during this COVID-19 infection, which I summarize here again. We know that, as I mentioned, that TGF-beta, in order for TGF to work, TGF-beta must be activated by different mechanisms. We know so far, this is most of the reported already. Actually, this COVID-19 virus, their S protein can directly bind the integrin, which is including alpha 5 beta 6 or alpha 5 beta 8, which express the epithelial cells and immune cells, which are important factors to activate TGF-beta. And this virus can also cause the imbalance of the so-called RAS, which is virus ACE, this agonist 2 axis, which is important. As I mentioned, this TGF-beta may actually enhance the furin, but the furin, though, is one of the important factors, together with the other metrics such as MMPs, RS, be an important factor to activate TGF-beta. And the neutrophils itself is an important source for store and the release of the active TGF-beta through their, for example, aspartate. And another part I want to mention is probably is very important. When virus affected the patients, they cause these different cells death. If these cells become apoptotic, they can be engulfed and digested by the macrophages, which in turn can produce TGF-beta or active TGF-beta, which is quite important. We have to remember fibrosis is very important for the TGF-beta production too. On the other hand, for example, the RS inflammation can be an important factor for activation of TGF-beta. And as I mentioned, this COVID-19 patient has a very unique symptoms, which is the coagulation problem, which is platelet activation. Platelet activation is probably one of the most important factors to activate TGF-beta. We knew that for many years. And as I mentioned, TGF-beta in the blood, we have this latent form there. And also another type of the cells, which is called neutrophils, myeloid-derived suppressor cells, can store or release active TGF-beta. We know that several factors can be the risk factor to enhance the severity of the COVID-19, including the type 2 diabetes or obesity, whenever. Now, why the high glucose can be his risk factor? Because of time, I'll give you a few examples to illustrate that. As I mentioned, this is a well-known phenomena that when the cells become apoptotic, they can rapidly engulfed by these phagocytes, especially macrophages in the body. This phagocytosis in turn can produce several of the immune regulatory cytokines we call. One important one is TGF-beta. They do not produce very much of the inflammatory cytokines, but TGF-beta is important. If, for example, in the COVID-19 patients, if this virus causes the death of these pneumocytes or epithelial cells, endothelial cells, or immune cells in the lung, if these cells die because of apoptotic, you can imagine that TGF-beta can be produced or enhanced or activated. So another example is that—
wind up. Do you want to just do some final thoughts?
Okay, I want to see here, which is important for this. The final point I want to make here is that why the high glucose can be an important factor for COVID-19 severity. We think that diabetes, maybe this high glucose can make more of the TGF-beta activation, therefore maybe an important factor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chen. Thank you for that information on the role of TGF-beta in COVID-19. I'd now like to introduce Saran Sound, who's the CBO and General Manager of AI Division at Oncotelic Therapeutics. As a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, Saran Sound has been founder, CEO, and GM at startups and public companies, and held senior leadership roles at companies that were acquired by leaders such as Marvel and Qualcomm. Welcome, Saran Sound, on speaking about the data and science of Ayurveda.
Thank you, Jennifer. Ancient Ayurveda meets modern biotech, meets cutting-edge AI, artificial intelligence. Hello and welcome to our second webinar. My name is Saran, and I'm the Chief Business Officer of Mation Oncotelic Therapeutics. We're changing our name from Mation to Oncotelic, so please excuse the tongue twister. Mation is a roll-up of 3 companies building an advanced biotech combining AI, artificial intelligence, and RNA antisense nanomolecular technologies. We are an oncology company with our lead candidate drug that targets the protein TGF-beta2 for cancer. Our drug OT-101 is in phase 3 for pancreatic and melanoma cancer and the rare pediatric disease DIPG, for which FDA has granted Mation a $100 million commercialization coupon. Earlier this year, in February, we hit the pivot button. We switched from cancer trials to antiviral research pretty much overnight, anticipating the worst. We discovered that TGF-beta was involved in the mechanism of action for SARS-CoV-2. Upon screening several molecules, we discovered our lead candidate drug, OT-101, as well as an Ayurvedic supplement called artemisinin, as having potent activity in vitro. We initiated 2 international studies, one for OT-101 for severe COVID patients, and another, we initiated a global study for the Ayurvedic compound called Damanaka, whose active ingredient, artemisinin, showed activity in the lab. So we bet 2 horses in the race, although it seemed more like a tortoise and a rabbit. Our allopathic drug took the conventional road as we pursued a different path for Ayurveda. Conventional trials, as this chart shows, costs millions of dollars and countless man hours. We knew it would take over a year to get approvals despite a fast-moving pandemic. Ayurveda looked like fast track. The plant species was well known, grew wild in the foothills of the Himalayas, and was prescribed for fever, inflammation, and respiratory functions, which are common for COVID patients. It had been around for a couple of thousand years. It was safe, prolific, and readily available. Looks like our bet paid off. I'm pleased to announce that Ayurveda is demonstrating strong efficacy in our Indian study, and with license in hand, our partner Windless Biotech will launch the product on December 25th, and it has been an exciting journey so far. A whole spectrum of repurposed drugs was thrown at the virus very early on, none that proved very effective. In fact, you may have heard of remdesivir, an early cure for severe COVID. While part of the standard cocktail in private hospitals in India, not very many physicians are prescribing it. The only drug that was shown to work was dexamethasone, but only for severe patients. The advantage of an oral dose like Ayurveda is obvious. As either prophylactic or therapeutic, it can be consumed at home versus in hospital through an IV infusion. For artemisinin, there are many Ayurvedic plants in nature, Davana, Damanaka, or Indana. When you look at the ancient Ayurvedic texts, it is prescribed for inflammation, blood cleaning, respiratory, tonic, and anti-fever. So this should ring a bell because it is the symptoms of a COVID patient. A plant like Artemisia has evolved over thousands of years to defend itself against a broad spectrum of viruses at the RNA level. And this is why it is effective for a broad set of symptoms. It is not optimized for a single virus, but defends against many. Of course, not every species is potent. It requires careful pharmaceutical grade manufacturing, which is what we did to prove it out in the lab. Compared to many attempts to turn the plant into a brew or tea, which has impurities and non-standardized impurities, which have demonstrated zero activity. So we have opened our study in India with a global trial and 3 sites open in India, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, where the number of subjects is 120. And because of the encouraging results from our study, we're expanding to 300 patients at 6 sites in India. We have arms opening in Nigeria and to be followed on in Peru. So our study is an open label, 2-arm controlled study, multi-center, phase 4, and it compares the efficacy of an oral dose of Ayurveda with standard of care versus standard of care alone. We are focused on mild and moderate cases, WHO scale 2, 3, and 4, and we are now increasing it to higher cases, WHO scale 5, and with comorbidities. The patient takes 5 pills in 5 days, 1 pill per day. If the symptoms remain, the second cycle follows after a 5-day rest period. The duration for subject is 28 days. Our product Ayurveda is positioned to address the pandemic in India. It inhibits the protein TGF-beta, which is active in the mechanism of action for SARS-CoV-2 virus. The implication is that Ayurveda is expected to be effective in the entire infection cycle of COVID. Early in the infection, it can stop the virus from replicating, so it's an antiviral. It can address viral symptoms like fever, cough, even severe lung infection. Post-recovery, research suggests it can treat the scarring of lungs and other organs. And finally, because it is a broad spectrum therapy, it can even have an impact on the common flu. It seems like a miracle drug. We are very excited to share the efficacy data from our study so far. We have enrolled 120 patients. We are going to submit an interim report with 60 patients' data. This early preliminary results are for 32 patients, and it's very exciting and confirms other independent studies. We measure the disease progression on WHO scale. 1 is asymptomatic and 10 is death. Our study focused on mild and moderate patients, WHO scale 2, 3, 4, skewing towards moderate. We were very excited, number 1, that compared to SOC, the treatment arm showed a linear progression from 4 to 1. 4 is hospitalized and 1 is asymptomatic. The SOC charts looked random, reflecting the cocktail of drugs thrown at the patient, versus the treatment arm, which showed a temporal linear progression, making it statistically significant. Number 2, 75% in the treatment dropped from WHO scale 4 to 1 in the first day of the dose. That's the difference between hospitalized and discharged, indicating that the first dose had a very strong impact. I will end with a couple of slides. Ayurveda is post-COVID. We are planning to do multiple studies across the entire spectrum of not only COVID, but other diseases as well, including post-recovery, as well as influenza. I will stop there because my time is up, but I'll just end by saying that vaccines are important. We want drug therapies to work with the vaccines, but they are not a silver bullet. There will be logistical issues and mutations of the virus, which will require an effective drug like Ayurveda. Thank you.
Thank you, Saran Sand. I'd now like to introduce Hitesh Winless. He's the Managing Director of Winless Biotech Private, private equity-backed pharmaceutical contract development and manufacturing organization. Hitesh has over 20 years of experience in founding a family-funded startup, building a formulations manufacturing business, raising private equity capital from financial and strategic investors, and building a professional organization that ranks among the top 5 CDMOs of India. He has 14 inventions and 9 patents in semiconductor processing and pharma formulations. Welcome, Mr. Hitesh Winless. Hitesh, would you like me to share your screen?
Yes,
Share
please.
your slides, please.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. I will talk a little bit about what Windless is doing in this project and why this drug is critically important, what stage we are, what kind of approaches we are taking for manufacturing, purification, standardization, and supply of Artemisia. So let's go to the next slide, please. A little bit about Windless, who we are. So we have been a contract development and manufacturing company for the last 20 years. We have 4 manufacturing facilities, and we make pharma, nutraceutical, and herbal products for several multinational and Indian clients for markets in India, ROW, which is rest of the world, so Southeast Asia and Africa, and also to US. We employ about 1,500 people, and we ship about close to 2.2 billion dosages a year to various companies and patients. I want to talk a little bit. Let's go to the next slide, please. Some of our key customers, you will see, are multinational companies like Pfizer, Sanofi, Merck, and Indian large pharmaceutical companies, as well as fast emerging biotech and generic companies across the world. Let's go to the next slide. So, what is Windless's role in this project? We are the development partners which are taking the product from lab scale to commercial scale. As you know, Ayurveda products originally designed, for one physician treating one patient with one product. And in this case, we are really gearing up for mass deployment of this drug. And so there are a lot of things that we have to overcome and make sure that we are keeping in line with regulations, but more so, and especially so, in terms of quality. So Windless's role is in managing the regulatory pathway and approval in India. We are also the sponsor for the phase 4 clinical study, and we have developed the formulation as well as the supply chain for supply to all the key markets where Mation and Oncotelic are planning to put this product in. Let's go to the next slide. This is where I want to spend most of my talk on. So, as you know, herbal products have not been highly regulated in terms of manufacturing standards, while the pharmaceutical allopathic industry has moved very, very far ahead in terms of mandating good manufacturing practices and standards for assuring quality, purity of the drugs. So in this case, there have been a lot of studies. In fact, one of the most important initial studies that Oncotelic did in a BSV biosafety lab in US was to evaluate artemisinin. And what we found was that in vitro, there is good artemisinin and bad artemisinin. So artemisinin extracted the wrong way or processed the wrong way can have zero in vitro activity. So it was very, very important for us to ensure that what we are doing preserves the goodness of the artemisinin or its activity, and we are able to make a product that is effective and safe. So starting with the active ingredient artemisinin, which is called as a drug substance, we control for heavy metals, including lead and arsenic, as per US Pharmacopoeia Chapter 231, using ICP-ES and very, very advanced tools for quantification. We control for residual solvents, which include ethanol and hexanes. These are involved in extraction of the active from the plant, and the product or the drug substance is passing the USP 467 criteria. And all of this is done using advanced techniques like gas chromatography. The polymorphic form, there are two polymorphic forms of artemisinin, and the ratio is an important parameter that is also being controlled. And then there are three impurities, three identified impurities. One of them is thujone, RC3, which have known side effects for when humans consume them. So they have to be controlled under a certain limit, and this is a very, very important part of purification and control for the drug substance. These are done with the high performance liquid chromatography based techniques. Also, artemisinin is a BCS class 3 drug, so its absorption is limited by its solubility in the body. And so, the kind of particle size morphology as well as the size that we choose also become extremely important, because you might, if you're not taking the rightly processed artemisinin, then essentially your the blood levels might be very different. So again, this is something which has to be standardized, and we're doing that using Malvern master sizes. Finally, the drug substance that we have chosen is being evaluated in vitro in the US biosafety lab to confirm its activity against COVID-19, and also the selective index of greater than 100. Starting with this bulk drug, then we are getting into the formulation aspects. Again, in a lot of Ayush manufacturing, what you find is, as you come from a allopathic manufacturing world towards the Ayush manufacturing world, you find that the regulations are much loose, and a lot of times manufacturers are not taking care of contaminations from a previous batch or a different product into the one that is being targeted. And for us, it was very, very important that we follow the best of both worlds. And so for us, cleaning method development and transfer to facility under GMP was very critical. We have done that. We have done excipient compatibility studies to ensure that every single excipient that is used in this formulation is preserving its purity, as well as preserving the amount or ensuring that there is no growth in the content of impurities over the shelf life. This is also something that is very important and comes from the allopathic world, and we are implementing this. Further, as I mentioned, absorption of the drug inside the body is very important, and therefore standardizing an in vitro method based on dissolution testing, which is almost never done in Ayush manufacturing. We are doing this, taking cue from allopathic manufacturing, ensuring that each batch and every product is made in the most optimal way. The analytical test methods are being validated, and shelf life is being assigned based on stability studies that quantify the purity as well as impurity. Finally, the quality parameters are being established through quality control specifications. And the capsule that has been manufactured for the clinical trial material has also been subjected to in vitro test in the biosafety lab to ensure that it is preserving the activity against SARS-CoV-2. And this is how the clinical trial batch has been manufactured, and this is how we are planning to conduct the manufacturing to ensure that every batch preserves the activity and purity, and there is absolutely minimum chances of side effects to this. We are very, very encouraged with the initial results. Almost close to 95 patients have been enrolled, and we are looking forward to finishing the trial and sharing our results very, very soon again, and looking forward to making a difference across the spectrum of this disease, as well as making an impact to the population at large. With that, that is my last slide. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hitesh. We'd like to go ahead and start now with the Q&A. We have some great questions in the Q&A section. For that, we will be welcoming Dr. Vong True, who is the CEO of Oncotelic Therapeutics and an expert in pharmaceutical development. We'll also be welcoming Dr. Balram Singh, and he is the president of the Institute of Sciences in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, and the founder of Prime Bio, a biotech-based company. As well as, please also welcome Professor Shekhar Anambolta. He is an MD in Ayurveda and is a founding director of Ojas Ayurveda Wellness Center in Pennsylvania, USA. Thank you all for joining us. So one of the questions we had in the Q&A is we've heard from a lot of experts. We heard a lot of information about artemisinin. Dr. True is also an expert on artemisinin and pharmacology. Can you please sum up and give your perspective on why artemisinin is the ideal candidate to help stop the pandemic?
Okay, so I think to sum it up, we are looking at allopathic versus Ayurvedic traditional medicines. Allopathic, you're dealing with new chemical entity that's specific for a particular disease. But in Ayurvedic, you're relying on medicine that's coming from the plant. And you have to remember the plant co-evolved with bacteria, fungus, and all that. So they've seen these viruses already. Whereas allopathic medicine, the reason there's so many failures is that they haven't seen the same virus. Whereas Artemisia has seen RNA viruses before. One of the plant pathogens for Artemisia is actually an RNA virus.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vong. Another question we have is there a recommended protocol against COVID and for prevention of COVID with Artemisia? If yes, what is it and can it be obtained in the US? That's open to anyone. Maybe Dr. Vong is also the best one to answer that question.
Maybe Dr. Chen can pitch in on that one.
You mean me?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. The question is there a recommended protocol against COVID for prevention, and for prevention of COVID with Artemisia? And if yes, can it be obtained in the US?
Yeah, let's try to be an interactive answer there. I think from the perspective of TGF-beta, Dr. Chen, what would you think if we have a TGF-beta inhibitor? How should it be implemented?
I think this I'm talking about TGF-beta because it's a paradox there when people because actually I talked to quite a few people, including some people from the FDA and also NIH, the scientists there. They all agree that TGF-beta is important for the the long problem, especially in the fibrosis and also the pulmonary edema. And but at the beginning, the people always had a concern that TGF-beta is normally regarded as the immunosuppressive cytokine. And we also see these patients, they have so-called cytokine storm, especially R6, but we know that R6 neutralizing clinical trial was failed. I mean, it's not successful. What my point was that when people think of TGF-beta, they always think, oh, TGF-beta is immunosuppressive cytokine. If we block TGF-beta, can we make the inflammation more severe? Maybe the diseases can be even worse. That is superficial because we know the TGF-beta is kind of a very unique cytokine with multiple phases of the immune regulation. Now, depending totally the environment context of different tissues, TGF-beta can be immunosuppressive or immune pro-inflammatory. I'll give you one example. TGF-beta can induce these so-called immunosuppressive cells, which suppress the immune response. At the same time, TGF-beta can induce these so-called Th17 cells. I did not have time to elaborate more. Th17 cells, TGF-beta signaling is also essential because without TGF signaling, TGF17 cannot be induced. What's the difference? Difference is that TGF-beta can induce Tregs in the absence of R6. However, in the presence of R6, TGF-beta can induce Th17, not T-regulated cells, and totally switching from the immune suppressive to the immune pro-inflammatory cytokines. But we also remember this is a virus infection caused at the first stage of that. You can imagine that when virus come to the body, the neutrophils, the first guys to come to there to try to fight against this virus. Of course, they die, they release a lot of things, and the R6 can be a very important one there too. Also, the macrophage can be important there too. In that case, in the presence of R6, TGF-beta can do very bad thing, not only good, not a good thing anymore. In that case, especially in context of this COVID-19, that's why I had several discussions with Dr. Wong. I mean, in the telephone, we both agree that when the people, for example, especially the people with the latest stage of when the patient with this COVID-19, when they have exhausted all the other options of the treatment. Now, why don't we consider this probably one of the last hope if the patient, did not have any kind of the other options? This is a life or death option. Now, the TGF-beta can be probably, I cannot see the most important, but probably at least the one of the most important factors, which may be think of in terms of the worsen the disease at the later stage. That's my personal perspective. But at the beginning, people thought that that's probably nonsense, but we are happy to see more of the studies now seeing this is probably good to that direction. That's why I really want to call the attention, not only the people from the scientific world, maybe also from the people like you guys in the industry world. Think of that one. Maybe this is one of the important pathway. I mean, that's what my personal thinking.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe we can put that question to everyone on the board, because that's a significant question that we all would like to have an answer to. Can we start with you, Dr. Suhas?
Well, I fully agree that definitely it has the anti-inflammatory properties in inhibiting the TGF-beta storm, but we also see that the plants work very differently. And even though it is at a nanoparticle extract level, it still has its protective benefit as well as its active benefit together. And I think that's the reason why it is completely different than any synthetic molecule that we will look at. That's why we can almost say that it will kind of enhance its activity for the immune response of inhibiting the TGF-beta, but it will also not completely damage the immune system function to a greater extent, to actually support and allow the body to recover from the disease state rather quickly. And that's why coming from a natural source and extraction, I think it would be more of a unique molecule. And I'm personally very excited to see Ayurveda being used in the field. And we would like to pass it on to many of our Ayurvedic doctors, colleagues in India, whoever wants to probably get some samples from Hitesh and start using it for their friends, families, and patients, and start seeing the benefits of it. And we have already seen that with the trials, and we'll be seeing more and more of that. And as we see more, we'll be probably going back to our desk and looking at the data more closely and analyze it, even various different pathways that we right now don't know that how it is working and why it is working.
So we have another question, and it is, this is directed to Hitesh. How many weeks will it take estimated to ramp up to 100 million doses a month? How quickly can India produce this medication to treat COVID?
So, we don't have any issue in capacity ramp up. We have standing capability to do more than 300 million doses a month already. I think the key thing over here will be the availability of qualified artemisinin drug substance, because as I mentioned, we looked at several sources to identify the one that is actually having both in vitro activity and is which is being used. So not every artemisinin is the same. There will be some limited supply, I think, because malaria has been a neglected disease, and the farming of the crop is also limited. We are also working in parallel to evaluate a couple of semi-synthetic sources where we have access to a material which is of the appropriate quality, but we are putting it through the testing, especially the in vitro testing that we feel is a very important screen in making sure that the activity against the virus is preserved. So I think the dosage manufacturing should be fine. The bulk drug is something that we are working on.
Great, thank you. And we talked about the artemisinin treatments being accessible to people, and how it is considered Ayurvedic. Can other people jump in and talk about that?
Yes.
Maybe Dr. Balram Singh?
It's very interesting, actually, very interesting presentations. I think one of the things that one has to look at, and maybe Hitesh can shed more light on, is that he said that there are two forms, form A and B, or form 1 and 2, and there is some kind of ratio in the extraction. Now, why am I answering this in the question of whether it's Ayurvedic or not? From my experience of using natural products, I have found that, and I think Suhasji kind of alluded to that, that these things operate very differently. And while we don't know all the complexity of the pathways that Dr. Chen pointed out, but if there is one system that can address to multiple pathways based on whatever research we have done, I mean, my research is more based on Tulsi, is that the plants have seen these things and they have multiple response. That is one of the Ayurvedic modern scientific approach, is that they respond, they have multiple molecules and multiple forms, and they address multiple sites. So given that fact that there is a farm A and farm B, and there is a specific ratio, and what I understand that there is specific extraction method, all that kind of sounds like something of Ayurvedic in nature. My question is, what will be, I think there was some question I also looked at, some kind of, what kind of formulation, how much is the bioavailability of this product? And you calling it artemisinin, but it looks like it's maybe even slightly more than something else in that, because this is just an extract. And I don't know at what level the testing has been done, but that would be very interesting things, whether it's how bioavailable it is. And especially, I think from what I saw, the safety index of OT101 is higher than this. So this, but nevertheless, it is a natural. So it will be important to know bioavailability and if what kind of formulation you need to, if you do, to increase that or enhance that and better make it better safety index.
Thank you.
And
And
to
Uh,
go back to this question regarding the Ayurvedic origin, means this herb has been around over a millennia in all the different parts of the world, in the foothills of Himalaya, China, many parts of Africa. It has been around different species. The specific herbal extract that we are using and put to use for the clinical trials is being produced and manufactured, and the plants are used from Indian subcontinent. From an Ayurvedic perspective, anything that comes from original natural elements, it's a natural medicine. So that's the reason why we call it as Ayurvedic. So something which is coming from a natural source, having a clear understanding of the herb, the herbal mode, action, and the food grade quality and the safety and the efficacy of that. That's the reason why we call it Ayurvedic, not only as confined to an Indian subcontinent as such. So it's the broad spectrum definition why we call it as Ayurvedic, and Geeta ji would agree to that, that yes, the description of this is in Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia described over a millennia, but now it has been used for the similar purposes for a long time, but now we are actually seeing that whether we can use the plant, get the extract and use it for our population in India, which we would like to create a very, very cost effective remedy that is effective and it is quick acting. And I think that's the reason why very soon we'll be approaching the Ayush Ministry to see whether we can call this as an Ayurvedic herbal medicine that can be used for COVID. Geeta, do you have any comment about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not Ayurveda is definitely not confined to the Indian subcontinent. So since centuries, or let us say even millennia. Like I was actually recently doing a historical accounting of what had happened in the Ayurvedic from the beginning. So it's quite extensive and found across different continents from many centuries, and in fact. Like extending to Europe and to Greece, even before the birth of Christ. So and its understanding is not based on plant and and its active ingredient and how it acts on a body. It has a different understanding. It understands the medicine based on based on the concept of tridosha. So it is slightly different, but it is quite easy to like correlate actions of pharmacological activities of plants to diseases and the ways in which plants will act in the body, and connect the two using Ayurvedic intelligence, like, or Ayurvedic wisdom. So as long as Damanaga, if that is the right plant, and if the artemisinin is basically, we can prove that it is Damanaga is artemisinin, then of course there is no problem in connecting that to Ayurveda, because Ayurveda has a lot of capabilities of accepting new plants, and it has always grown in through its history by accepting new plants from different situations. But in this case, this is not even a new plant, so it's an already existing plant within the Ayurvedic spectrum. So I think it is. I agree with you, Surajji.
just to address Dr. Balram's question, I think Dr. Balram, we are working with a very, very highly purified form where it's more than 98, 99% identified as artemisinin. And for us, there is a whole range of dosage forms which optimize the bioavailability, but we have to do that work on a very, very rapid time frame. We are also looking at rectal delivery for patients which are intubated and cannot swallow the pill. So there are many other things that in terms of a program and a research program that we are working with Mateo and Oncotelic to do this. And as time and ability to go forward and do the development comes, that will be there. But we wanted to do this clinical trial and test out whether our in vitro action is being seen. And what we find is very, very encouraging, because even if you look at so many pharmacologic allopathic drugs, where physicians have been unfortunately losing patients just because of the hepatic toxicity of many of these IV drugs. It's such a safe product, where it has been used so long, and seems to have a very unique activity. And now, tying that back to TGF beta suppression and understanding that mechanism is bringing a lot of more scientific light and avenues of further research. So we are walking on this path and hoping that this can really the data is what is exciting us, and we feel that just the fact that it has been used for so long, the safety, it makes it much more viable as an immediate solution. But yes, long term, we'll do all these studies and further develop it as in multiple doses for different aspects of clinical use.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. Is this the Dominica that you are using, the Indian plant? Or you say you had a variety of plants you have tried?
Yes, so we are using Dominica. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have time for one final question. This is for Mr. Saransan. We all agree, I think, that artemisinin and this Ayurveda is great for the pandemic and to treat COVID. What is the best way to get it out to around India and to the world?
And so I will have our partner Hitesh chime in on this. But really, I think as an herbal supplement, it should be fairly simple to get it into the supply chain. However, the indications for the product have to be within compliance of the regulatory authorities. So, for example, in India, we have a license to manufacture and sell, and we are approaching the Ayush Ministry to get a label for COVID, meaning this drug helps in COVID symptoms. In the United States, we have to go through the FDA, that we will be filing an IND to get a similar indication. Hitesh, would you like to add some to that?
No, I just wanted to say that, with the herbal route, we also have the license to produce it as a nutraceutical. So in a lot of countries, this will go as a herbal supplement, where Ayush systems are not recognized. It will go as a herbal supplement. And we are evaluating and working, and in fact looking for interest from marketing partners, for various geographies. So Saran and I are looking for strong marketing partners in various markets, countries, to ensure that we can get it out in the fastest possible way. So we would love to hear from people who are able to connect us with the right partners in these geographies.
Yeah, I think the overriding emphasis for the team is really to deploy the drug or this Ayurveda as quickly as possible to have an impact on the pandemic. So that's why we chose this route, to get it out as quickly as possible. And the Ayurvedic route, given this background in terms of safety, allow us to do that. The allopathic route is taking too long, and I understand there's a lot of regulatory requirement just to ensure the safety of the patient. But in the process, the drug development is slowed down quite a bit. And even till now, we haven't seen any effective drug against this virus. So having this pathway, the Ayurvedic pathway, is really moving us forward in front of our allopathic colleagues. I think it is an opportunity where Ayurvedic medicine is going to shine, because you can't find a drug when the source hasn't seen the pathogen. and the plant has seen the pathogen. And we should fall back on our traditional medicine to get that information and get that knowledge to combat emerging viruses such as COVID-19.
Thank you. Dr. Shekhar, do you have any comment? You want to add anything to the whole discussion that we have been having? Please.
It's a good idea to do this formulation, but maybe with the different routes. So Mr. Hitesh mentioned that rectal and sublingual, this ways also different ways to give. Maybe efficacy can be faster, and people who are in ICU and those conditions also, we can take care about that. And intravenous, so probably you are already expert in the field of manufacturing also. Maybe intravenous route also can be given. And by giving only capsulation form, may not be efficient like that. We don't know the studies, how the things are going on until we start giving to the clients. Right now, I'm getting approached by the various COVID patients are contacting us, and we have standard formulations we are giving. And now we can try with this Ayurveda and see how they are responsive for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shekhar. And I think compliance is very important because when we talk about just 5 capsules, 1 capsule per day that you take, which is very safe and easy and effective, that we are looking at people with mild to moderate symptoms and almost moving the trials to the next level to serious COVID symptoms itself. So I think we are having some exciting times ahead. I really want to thank each one of you for your wonderful expertise, your valuable time, and your ability to pitch in and enlighten all of us with the current situation of COVID, the WHO perspective, the traditional origin and the benefits from an Ayurvedic perspective. We are seeing what African countries are doing. We have seen what Dr. Chen has shared with us about the mechanism that it might be working. This is all becoming very realistic. It's all coming together. And I think we might have a potential remedy for COVID-19 in hand, which would be widely used not only in India, but many parts of the world. So thank you very much for all of your time. Good night. Have a good evening. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And once again, on behalf of Oncotelic Therapeutics, I really, really respect and appreciate your time. Thank you. Namaste.